The Galactic Senate was a marvel of alien architecture, its towering spires gleaming under the light of a distant blue star. Inside its grand chamber, countless alien dignitaries from dozens of advanced species gathered in their resplendent attire. They lounged in their seats, exchanging smirks and murmurs as the Emperor took center stage. His towering frame, adorned with gilded robes and shimmering ornaments, exuded power and authority. His voice, deep and resonant, carried a note of mockery that was impossible to ignore. "Humanity," he began, drawing out the word as though it left a bitter taste. "A species so naive, so primitive, they dared to ask for our help. As if the great galactic empire would stoop to aiding a race barely out of its cradle." His words were met with a wave of laughter, a cacophony of guttural growls, high-pitched chirps, and mechanical clicks from the assembled dignitaries. "Let us not forget," he continued, his tone dripping with scorn, "this is the same species that thought it could survive alone on the outskirts of the galaxy. And now, here they are, begging for scraps at our table. Pathetic." The humans present stood silently at the edges of a chamber, their expressions carefully blank. They were diplomats, unarmed and outnumbered, their small stature dwarfed by the towering figures of alien senators. Their silence only seemed to embolden the Emperor. "They claim resilience, adaptability," he sneered. "But what have they achieved? They stumbled into the stars with primitive technology, reliant on the ruins of greater civilizations. And now, when faced with true power, they cower. They grovel." The laughter grew louder, reverberating through the chamber like a cruel symphony. A snake-like alien leaned toward his neighbor, hissing, "I heard they still use combustion engines on some of their colonies." "How quaint." Another, a gelatinous mass with flickering lights, added, "They're more pests than a people. Perhaps we should exterminate them before they spread." The Emperor raised a hand, silencing the room. "Oh, let them spread. Let them try. They'll only serve as a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens to those who overreach." A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembly. One senator, a smaller, reptilian creature with shimmering scales, shifted uneasily in his seat. "There are rumors," he began hesitantly, his voice barely audible. "Stories of human warriors, resistance fighters. Some say they've developed." He trailed off under the withering glare of his peers. "Stories," the Emperor scoffed. "Fairy tales to comfort a dying species. If such warriors existed, they would be here. But they are not. Because humanity is weak. They are nothing." The humans didn't react. They didn't flinch. They didn't speak. They simply watched as the Emperor delivered his final words with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Let them cling to their myths and legends. In the end, they will fall, as all who defy the Empire have fallen before them." The chamber erupted in applause, the sound of arrogance echoing through its grand halls. She opened the case with a deliberate motion, the latches clicking softly. The room, previously filled with scoffs and dismissive murmurs, now held an air of silent curiosity. From within, she drew a blade. It was unlike anything the gathered dignitaries had ever seen, a long, elegant weapon that seemed to hum faintly as it caught the light. Its edge glimmered with a strange, otherworldly energy, the kind that made even the most advanced alien technologies pale in comparison. The Emperor's eyes narrowed as he regarded the weapon. "A relic? A mere piece of metal? Is this what you bring before the Galactic Empire?" His voice dripped with disdain, but there was something beneath it now, a faint edge of uncertainty. "This," she said, standing tall with the blade in her hand, "is no relic. It is the product of centuries of desperation and ingenuity. Forged from the rarest materials of Earth and crafted with technologies your kind couldn't begin to understand. This blade represents the spirit of my people." A hulking alien champion stepped forward, his massive frame covered in thick, gleaming armor. He towered over her, his multi-eyed face twisted into a mocking grin. "A toy," he rumbled. "You think your little toy can stand against this?" He raised a massive energy weapon, its barrel glowing with ominous light. She didn't flinch. Her gaze was steady, her stance unyielding. "I think your arrogance has blinded you to the truth. Strength is not found in size, nor in technology alone. It is found in resolve, in skill, in the will to fight for something greater than oneself." The Emperor, now visibly annoyed, waved a hand dismissively. "Enough of this. Show us, then. Let us see if your so-called resolve is worth anything." The champion stepped into the center of the chamber, towering over her, his every movement accompanied by the hum of servos and the clink of reinforced plating. He sneered down at her. "I'll make this quick, human." The fight began with a sudden, deafening roar as the champion lunged forward, his massive weapon swinging in an arc meant to crush her in a single blow. But she was no longer where he had aimed. Moving with inhuman speed, she sidestepped the attack, her blade slicing through the air with a sharp whistle. The champion staggered, the edge of her blade grazing his armor, leaving a glowing, molten line in its wake. The room gasped. This was no ordinary weapon. It cut through the alien's advanced materials as though they were paper. He roared in frustration, attacking again and again, but she was faster, her movements precise and fluid. Every strike he attempted was met with a dodge, a parry, or a counterattack. She moved like a dancer, each motion deliberate, each step calculated. The chamber, once filled with laughter, was now silent but for the clash of metal and the growl of the champion. Her strikes became bolder, cutting deeper, and with a final, calculated motion, she disarmed him. His weapon clattered to the floor, his towering frame faltering. She stood before him, her blade at his throat. The glow of the weapon reflected in his multiple eyes, and for the first time, there was no arrogance in his expression, only fear. She didn't strike the final blow. Instead, she turned to the Emperor, raising the blade to point directly at him. "Shall we continue?" she asked, her voice calm but unyielding.